serious. We have some, it's like so many things that that we're doing right now, and it's like I can't even. All right, are we on now?
Good evening and welcome once again to Capstone Educational Consultants College Journey Conversations. We're so excited this episode to have with us the CEO of Prompt, Brad Schiller. Brad, welcome to Capstone. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Appreciate it.
Things are kind of crazy. Where exactly is Prompt located, by the way, Brad?
Yeah, we're in the New York City area.
Oh my gosh. So here we are, right outside of Atlanta, Georgia, for Capstone, and we're talking right outside of New York City. So that's pretty.
Yeah, in New Jersey technically, but I have a soft spot for the Atlanta area.
What's that soft spot?
Well, my wife did not go to Georgia Tech, but her 5 siblings, all of them went to Georgia Tech.
Nice. So we have a little Georgia connection here.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. I make it. It's been a year probably since I've been down there, but I go at least once or twice a year. I'm usually in the area. So
that's super exciting. So tell us a little bit, if you can, tell us a little bit about Prompt. What is that all about?
Yeah, so we support thousands of students every year on college admissions essays, as well as all sorts of other writing that students do, generally higher stakes writing, such as preparing for like advanced placement exams. And pretty much, we'll provide feedback on roughly like 80,000 college admissions essays this year, ballpark. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's actually more than anybody else by a pretty significant margin, actually.
So how do students kind of get involved with Prompt? How do you interact with students?
Yeah, so we work in like a couple of different ways, and I know we're going to get into like the details on how we think about college admissions essays and all of that. But basically, there's like one of 2 ways that we work with students. One is we work kind of like one-on-one with one student to one writing coach, and we guide students through every single essay that they need to write. And a lot of students don't realize that, hey, if you're applying to college, you might be writing like 10, 20, 30 different essays actually across the admissions process. It's pretty intense. And so we actually, we'll be close to 200 writing coaches soon, kind of walks students through the process step by step. We do live video calls, we brainstorm content, we work on your personal brand. We develop an understanding of what a college will find compelling about you. And then you write drafts of essays where we have a lot of content that helps guide that. And then we review and provide feedback on essays with a real focus on like content structure, making sure that like your brand is like really coming through in the essays versus just like straight editing sentence level feedback. And then the other way that students work with us is at the last minute, basically. So about 75% of all students that directly come to us, so not through one of our hundreds of high school partners, but directly come to us, 75% of them submit their first essay to us after October 1st.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so don't be that person.
No.
So just literally just in the last week, we've done almost 400 essays for people that have already started.
So you're starting to see those essays rolling in.
Yeah, and it's like doubling like week over week right now, just in terms of like the number of essays that we're getting each week.
So based on that pulse, we can project the fact that now is a good time to get started with the college essay.
Well, actually, yesterday was. Or a week ago, but yes, and so what a lot of people don't like fully kind of like, so what we often find is that students that are thinking about essays, especially for parents, this is like first time parents going through the admissions process, don't have like the best, you're kind of thinking about it and you're like, oh, this can't be that bad. Like my kiddo and I get along really, really well. And the answer is, when it comes to essays, you and your child will not get along very well, because you're going to have an opinion on what to write about. The student will have an opinion on what to write about. The student will say that the student's going to be working on it, and then they just procrastinate. As I said, then 3/4 of them actually show up after October 1st which also happens to be during the school year. They might have sports, they might have AP classes, they might have all these other things that they need to be doing and activities, and they're not able to spend as much time on their essays that they need to. So what we typically recommend, and when we work with students, we really push for this actually, that if you start relatively soon with us, students that start relatively soon with us, we guarantee that they'll get their top essays done for their top 3 choice schools before September 1st. So basically before the start of the fall semester, which is exactly what you want to do. And by the way, when you're like across those 3 schools, you may have anywhere from just 1 essay to write, which is relatively uncommon actually, to 20 essays to write, right? Just for 3 schools. So it's really important to kind of like get started now. And there's about 30 schools that we call essay intensive schools that are, you're looking at least like 2 to 3 like additional essays on top of, let's say, the common application essay that's being written. So
yeah, so the numbers can be really overwhelming for families, well, for students especially. And the go-to is always, in terms of editing and reviewing, the go-to is always those people that are closest within the student's reach. And those being the parents, right? And maybe a teacher, maybe in the English department or such, that tends to maybe even a college counselor as well.
Yeah.
Actually be the one to review them. I always tell my students that I work with about parents reading these essays and editing the essays. I always tell my parents, I encourage them to consider the college essay a gift. And so just like when someone gives you a gift, you don't open it until it's time to open it. And so I always tell them the time to open the essay gift from your child is after it's been submitted. So that
you
way,
never talk about it.
right.
It's good.
Consider it just a wrapped gift and open it after it's done. Don't open it before. You can't see it before. It's always the best thing to do. That's what I kind of encourage my parents to do. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with that. I know that for a lot of parents, it's hard, right, to do that. And so there's a couple of fun tips that actually I give when I give workshops, which I used to give a lot of them in person. Now I don't get to do that. But so one of the tips that I actually give parents, Mark, you're gonna love this one. And I may have told you this before, but I actually encourage the best way that we have found that if you're a parent working with the student to get your kid to actually write the essay is you set a date. You say, this Friday, we're having a date night and we're going to read each other's essays.
Oh.
So the parent actually will write their own college admissions essay from when they would have been applying to college, from like pretending using their experiences from when they were like 17, 18 years old. And what's great about that, because we also train hundreds of counselors every year. And in our counselor courses, one of the things we do is we're like, when's the last time you wrote the admissions essay?
Right.
So we actually have all the counselors write their own admissions essays. And let me tell you, really hard.
It is.
Really hard. So what you end up with is actually a really fun experience where the parent realizes how difficult this process actually is. Yes. So that's number one, which is good. Because it develops empathy with the student. Number two is actually gets your kid to write the essay, which otherwise they may procrastinate on, or we have a lot of data that shows they procrastinate. And number three is, guess what? Your kid learned something about you. Your child learned something about you. It's just like a really fun experience. So a lot of parents are like, I don't know if I want to do that. But what we do find is like, if you're going to do something, if you want to be involved in the essay process, do something like that, because then it will actually help you understand what your student is going through, but also kind of force your student to get started a little earlier. So while I tend to agree, like the less involved in the process, the better. At the same time, we know that's not practical for some. So let's like use strategies here that kind of actually help your student actually go through and get started. We even have like an entire parent guide to the essay. So, if you are a do-it-yourself type parent, guess what? You can read our 8,000 word guide on, like, walks you through step by step of how to do the essay with your student. And let me tell you, it's a lot of work. So, which is, I mean, it's like a very similar process to what we follow, right? But it's very intensive. But we do find that students really do want to engage with somebody else, whether or not it's a teacher, their counselor, an outside counselor. But as we always say, there's basically two reasons to use somebody outside, like prompt, or you, Mark, somebody else. Is one, it comes down to like personal brand, which is really understanding like what will a college find compelling about you, and having somebody that has the experience of working with thousands of students or hundreds of students or whatever the number is over a period of time, that develops that, hey, we know what colleges will find compelling about you. Let's talk about that, figure out how to write about that. So that's number one, which we often find most students are not writing about the right things. And I know we'll talk about that later. Number two is time. So our entire education system is not structured to support writing. It's just not. Okay. I've run all the math behind this. I mean, our mission is to make people better writers. And the short story is, if you're a high school English teacher, you have 150 kids, you give one writing assignment. And let's say you spend 5 minutes providing feedback on that assignment, which is not nearly enough. Every time you give an assignment requires 13 hours of feedback on that, on just essays.
Wow.
Now, what minimum for a first draft of a college admissions essay should be about 45 minutes worth of feedback. So if you multiply that out across 100, that's just one draft, by the way. Then you need like multiple drafts. Like you need to do 2 to 3 drafts just so your Common App essay. Then you add supplements. Then you add all these other things on. By the time you're done, you need like sometimes 10, 20 hours worth of like writing coaching time. And that is not something that nearly any high school can actually deliver, because of and by the way, it's all at a similar time of the year, or ideally over the summer when your teachers are actually on vacation. Like, so all of this kind of compounds itself where it's actually impossible to get the level of support. Even if you have really phenomenal teachers, or counselors, it's impossible to get to the level of support that you actually need through the application process. That is like, it's just it's a time problem. And as I said, just like, a knowledge expertise problem.
Yeah, that's just, those statistics are just phenomenal, especially when you start to like see the number of essays that are required on average, and then start multiplying that towards the number of hours of just revisions. And that on top of the hours it takes for a student to even just kind of draft it out.
Oh yeah, brainstorming, everything. And what we actually find is, if you work with a good writing coach, your student will spend about half the time on their essays to get to a similar or better place, to be honest, half the time as they would normally.
Right.
Because they're getting really good feedback throughout the process. And we find so many of the students that, let's say, arrive a week or two before the deadline to us, they submit their first draft. They've already gone through feedback with teachers, friends, family, everything. And they're submitting it to us almost as a rubber stamp. And then we read it and we're like, you got a lot of work ahead of you. So now they basically just wasted, 20, 30 plus hours worth of their time, just let's say on the common application essay, not to mention all the other essays, which by the way, are just as important as the common application essay, just as important. They're just only for one school potentially. And that's a problem. Like, it's a massive, massive problem that we find.
That kind of brings up a good point with how much emphasis is placed on the quality of topic, the quality of writing, the time it takes to do all of that. And now, there's a whole new element that's been added to the college admissions component, where many, now over 1,200 colleges and universities across the country, have gone test optional. Okay. Mm-hmm. So as a result, one might gather from upcoming admission cycles that the essay is going to become even more important to the process. I mean, it was very important before, but it may actually become even more important. So, you know, how much of a factor do you think the college essay is going to play in coming admission cycles?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been on the train that writing is very important for a long time, obviously. That's my company. But I will say that, everybody's going to say that it depends on the institution and, the college that you're applying to. And obviously that does matter pretty significantly. At the same time, when you're talking about like very highly selective institutions, it's always actually been a pretty critical component of the entire application because, when you, and so like many top institutions use, there's like two pieces of like an overall score that kind of forms like this matrix, which is one is the academic score, which consists of like GPA, test scores, that sort of thing. And the other is the personal score, which consists of like essays, recommendations, interview, your activities, maybe demonstrated interest in the school, that sort of thing. And what we find is that most students are actually self-selecting where they're going to apply based off of their GPAs and their test scores. And now you may not even have the test scores. And by the way, your GPA, you didn't have grades maybe this semester. Even if you did, most colleges are going to discount those in a reasonable way because it's like the grading was just completely different, right? And they may not have like the full knowledge of how that was, which by the way, your high school counselors have to fill out like an entire thing on what the school did with COVID, which I don't envy them a lot. But like how much of that is going to a factor that's that going to play. And so what it really comes down to is that depending on the institutions you're applying to, you're likely going to be in a pool of relatively similar applicants. And especially for reach schools, you're going to be on what we call like the bubble, or what I call the bubble. And the way to get over that is through your personal score, which by the way, is how you craft your story of everything else that's compelling about you from the perspective of the college. Right. And in that case, essays are really the critical component. So that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is, hey, if you were, and this is like pretty simplistic, is like, hey, if there were 5 pieces of information you went on before and one of those disappears, each of those other pieces of information is more important now, right? Right. And so regardless of what admissions officers say, most are not going to say, hey, by the way, your essay is now going to be way more important, or by the way, GPA has always been like the most important driver for us. It's like, well, yeah, that makes sense, but like, let's talk about like the students that are like on the edge, like about to be admitted, not admitted. That to me is like the population, which by the way is like a lot greater than you would think at a lot of these institutions, just because, as I said, students are self-selecting where they're applying based off of the statistics that you already have, right? Which by the way, this year a lot more students may apply to institutions that they may not have applied to otherwise because they don't have a test score associated with them.
Correct. Yeah. Well, the topic of tonight's session here tonight, this episode is Saucy Secrets, right? To writing the college essay.
Which is, by the way, such a you.
It is such a me.
I read that, I'm like, that's so Mark.
I clearly titled it and I loved it. I was so excited about the title. Just, those adjectives are awesome. And so we love them. So the Saucy Secrets, we're going to talk about a few Saucy Secrets. If we've probably mentioned a few already, just some good insights. I want to say thank you to all of those that are joining us tonight online and watching us live. We're super excited that you're with us. Definitely want to remind you that Capstone Educational Consultants actually is conducting a college essay workshop. We have 2 of them to choose from at the end of July. So you can go online and check those out under the event tab. So check those out, and if that looks like something you'd like to join us here in person, actually at Capstone, we'd love to have you join us for that upcoming. Saucy Secrets of writing the college essay. Let's talk a little bit about it. What kind of topics do you think would be topics to avoid Well, name a couple good topics that you should avoid.
Okay, so I am generally a giant, not necessarily a contrarian per se in the admissions essay world, but I'm gonna like take it up a level first, so then we can talk about how to avoid things.
Good.
Okay, because I actually firmly believe that any topic can be a great topic for an essay, provided it meets certain criteria.
Very good.
Okay, so that is really important because guess what? A lot of people are going to tell you don't write about athletics, which by the way, most of the time you shouldn't. A lot of people are going to tell you don't write about like band and theater and getting bad grades, which you almost never should write about. And like a bunch of other like there's some weird things with like community service or mission trips that all get very cliched.
Yeah.
At the same time, guess what? On all of these topics, I've seen great essays. So let's kind of like take it up and really talk first about what types of things should you write about, and what I like to call the purpose of the application. Okay.
Yeah.
Mark, what would you say the purpose of the college application is?
Oh, that's an interesting question, because there are several that one might say is the purpose of the application, right? Or the essay. For admission, one might be to gain admission, because you have to like actually write it in order to fulfill the requirements of all those pieces that check the box, right?
Yeah, the check the box one. Yep.
Yeah. That would be one of them. Another might be to possibly showcase how good of a writer you are. Is that a good one?
Yeah, like I hear that too, right? And it's like, oh
Okay.
yeah, I'm a good writer. Yep.
How well maybe you can organize and structure your thoughts towards a particular topic or subject matter.
Yep.
Okay, I feel like I'm not hitting any of the bullseyes with you here.
Yeah, so it's weird, right? So here's the deal. And this is like if you're gonna remember one thing about our entire time together tonight. And Mark, I know you already know this, so thanks for playing along.
I love it.
So if you're only going to remember one thing about our conversation tonight, it's that the entire purpose of the application, not even just the essays, but the entire application, is to prove that you will be successful in college and beyond.
Nice.
It's a very succinct way to think about it, because this, it sums up like what colleges are looking for very, very succinctly. Mm-hmm. And if you just remember that when you're writing your essays, you're probably going to write about the right things, or the right, include the right activities and all these other things within the construct of your application. But why does that even matter? Like, what is the even purpose? Well, number one is colleges want to know that you are going to get to the college and you are going to graduate. I know that seems a little foreign. Like, it's like, oh, duh, like I'm intending to go to college and graduate. But guess what? Only 80% of kids that start college, a four-year institution, graduate.
Right.
Okay. So there's a lot of attrition along the way.
Right.
So that's number one. And it's a really important factor. So when you say like, okay, I'm going to be successful in college and beyond, they want to know that I believe that the student can get here and do the work. And if there's any challenges that they have along the way, that they're just going to overcome those challenges and complete and graduate. Okay. Number two is that they want to know that you're going to contribute to the school's community in some way. So schools are trying to build well-rounded classes that all add different values to each other. A huge part of the value of college is being around a like a student body that you can learn from, improve from. And what they want is students who are going to contribute. They also want students who are going to go, after they graduate, go do awesome things. Because alumni that do great things reflect really well back on the school, which then in turn increases the prestige. It might need more donation dollars too.
There's always that potential.
There's always money. By the way, if you think about anything, think about money.
That's right.
Which, by the way, graduation rates, it's all money related, because if a student graduates, you get tuition for all 4 years. If the student doesn't graduate, you don't get tuition for all 4 years. the higher your graduation rates, the better your school rankings are. Like all of this stuff kind of fits together. It's very monetarily or incentive related. And if you look at like Harvard, well, they just so happen to have had some of like the first presidents of the United States went there, like John Adams went there, right? etc. Guess what? I think that probably helped a little bit, right? With the prestige of the school. And maybe if it hadn't, maybe we would not be looking at them quite the same way now. And then the final thing is related to that the college actually wants to know that they will actually help put you on a path to achieving your goals, and that they may actually have a unique impact on doing so. So actually, one of the funny things is, so I went to MIT, and one of the funny parts was I actually got to read my application, like the notes that the admissions officer made on my application after I got in. And one of the things that I wrote about was what I wanted to be was a roller coaster designer. Okay. Clearly, I'm not a roller coaster designer now. And one of the notes that they actually made in like the 5 to 10 sentences was, "Oh, that's cool. Brad wants to be a roller coaster designer. I don't know how much MIT is going to help him be able to do that." Because but let's be honest, there's like 10 of those people in the world. So like, it's not like you can go to a school for roller coaster design, So I got in kind of despite that rather than because of, probably, but maybe it was unique. I don't know.
Right.
So just something to keep in mind, that the schools really want to know that they can actually have like a very unique impact on your life, and that you've actually thought through, which is what we call demonstrated interest, that the school is a good fit for you and you're a good fit for the school. So all those things kind of combine into this whole piece, as we said, that we say the entire purpose of the application is to prove you're going to be successful in college and beyond. And how do you do that, Mark? How would you prove that, would you say?
Boy, you've put me on the spot. How would you prove?
Yeah, how would you prove that you're going to be successful in college and beyond?
Wow. How would you prove it? Well, you would definitely have to, be able to convey your story in a way that would demonstrate success, the ability.
Yeah, so the only way that, guess what? Past success generally proves future success.
Very good. Why do I feel like I'm taking like a verbal test myself?
Wow.
Wow.
It's okay. I thought it's more fun to involve people.
It's way fun.
Rather than, you should see me in the classrooms. Students are like, "Oh my God." Like, I don't know. Don't call on me. Don't call on me. And I just throw things out there, just into the world and see what happens. But basically, how you prove it is through your experiences.
Yeah.
Now, the experiences, though, need to be related to specific traits that colleges are looking for in applicants, that when you have these traits, you're going to be more likely to be successful in college and beyond. Okay. Right. And this is the crux, the next most important thing from our conversation is these 5 traits. And when we talk about bad topics, good topics, as long as the topic is associated with one or more of these 5 traits, it can be a good topic. Okay, that's the gist of it. So now we're going to talk about the 5 traits. We can talk about the 5 traits if you want to, and then we can get into good examples, bad examples of topics and using the traits.
Yeah, let's hit the traits.
Okay, cool. Trait number 1, which I consider the most important trait, is drive. Okay, so these are students that are very perseverant. They're always overcoming challenges that they face, and they're always kind of like overcoming them as a result of their own actions, right? So that they are like going through and being like, okay, I need to do this to become a better person, to get out of this. And, they're kind of coming out of these challenges, having learned something about themselves and becoming a better person. Okay. Guess why, students that are driven, guess what? When they find challenges in college, they're going to overcome them. They're going to graduate. When they get into life, they're going to have challenges. They're going to have things. They're going to persevere. They're going to be driven. They're going to be more successful, right? It is very clear, right, that driven people are going to be more successful in life. Like if you look at, I know we always use like Elon Musk, as an example, but he's probably one of the most driven people in the entire world.
Yes.
Like just period. Okay. And guess what? I remember when I was a kid, I used to think, hey, like all these like athletes, they just happen to be like naturally talented. Well, guess what? Most of them are extremely driven and are just working their butts off, right? I was going to use a different word, but I wasn't sure what we were allowed to use here tonight.
We're friendly with that.
Yeah, we're family friendly here. So so they're working their butts off, and so this is like a critical key point that if you can come across in your application through your experiences that you're really driven, that's going to prove that. So that's number one. Number two is intellectual curiosity. So these are students who love to learn just for the fun of it, about certain topics or areas or subjects in which they're interested in. Now, a lot of students are like, I am not intellectually curious, like, or I don't care about that. Now, that's actually wrong, because we find that so many students actually have something they're really interested in, but learning about it is just normal for them. It's literally just straight up normal for them.
Right.
And so and guess what? But it's not really normal. And so what we find is that students don't write about intellectual curiosity when they should, because they don't understand that, hey, I should write about this, because they're like, oh yeah, like writing my own music and like mixing it or doing all these different crazy things is just normal. That's like just what they do. Like that's their thing. That's just what they do. They don't consider that unique in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
All right. And so why do colleges love people who are intellectually curious? It's because, and I could ask you that, but I'm just going to answer it. Because guess what? They're going to learn in college. They're going to learn throughout life, and they're going to be more successful. Like it's pure, like it's clear, right? And so that's really important. An example I like to give here is when I was applying for college, which I was lucky to get into MIT, but I did get rejected by Stanford and Princeton. I don't hold a grudge. Maybe I do.
How do you really feel about it, Brad?
I was talking to actually a former dean of admissions at Princeton, who's now in IC previously. And I was like, were you the one? Were you the one that rejected me? Turns out he had left like the year before. So it wasn't him. But it was, anyways, things I think worked out okay. But the general gist of it is, so I was applying to college, and I actually, in high school, there was a couple of AP AP exams that my school did not even offer classes for. So I'm like, I'll just learn the material and take the exams. Why not?
Right.
Like, normal for me. Did not write about it on my applications at all. Happens to be when I talked about those 5 to 10 sentences that somebody wrote on my MIT application, that was one of them. And it just happened to come up in my interview. No idea why.
Interesting.
Completely unlucky, and they're like, was really important apparently. You know, if they're like the totality of your application gets summed down into like 5 to 10 sentences, if that's one of them, it's probably pretty important. And so therefore it's like, that was like it's like intellectual curiosity. It's like learning and doing things outside of the classroom.
Yeah.
And now you just have so much access to so much information, whereas like Mark and I, everybody else, FYI, like we're older, and like the internet was not like as much of a thing.
That's right.
Right. So we didn't have access to this stuff, right? So like we had to use textbooks and things if we wanted to learn about it. So trait number 3 is initiative. So these are students who are very entrepreneurial. Any organization they're a part of, anything that they're a part of, they're seeing ways to make it better. And not only are they seeing ways to make it better, they're taking actions and acting on making it better, actively making things better. Okay.
Nice.
You know, these are the leaders, the entrepreneurs, etc. These are the people that are going to add a lot to the school's community, but also are going to go and have significant roles or create their own companies or whatever in the future. Number 4 is contribution. And so these are students who, no matter what group of people they're a part of, a peer group, a school community, their broader community, an activity, an organization, that no matter who they're around, that group is better as a result of their being there.
Right.
Okay. Now, a lot of students don't write about these two things, and they should. And what we find is the key question to ask yourself is, think of a group of people or an organization that you're a part of. Now imagine you did not exist. How would it have been different?
Right.
Which helps the student think through, this is how I can go and, this is my unique impact.
Yeah.
Because once again, it's the same thing. Hey, it's just normal for me to like lead this group or to do these different things. Like that's normal for me. They don't understand that that's actually unique. Okay.
Right.
And then the fifth trait is diversity of experiences. So colleges are trying to build a well-rounded class of a lot of different types of people that have different experiences, different interests, that then can kind of bring all of that together and then add to each other. So they can share experiences, people can learn from each other. And by the way, they also want to have an impact on, like, you don't want to like, unless you're maybe Princeton or UPenn, you don't want to like admit 1,000 students that are all going to be finance, like go into finance careers, right? Guess what? Like a lot of schools are like, it's like, I want my people to go have an impact on a lot of different areas of the world.
Right.
So for example, which was really interesting is like in the Harvard Supreme Court case that was recently, they actually looked at this and said, does this student, based off of, they're literally 17, 18, right? But does this student have the potential to make a significant positive impact on the world?
Wow.
And if the answer to that was yes, like very clear from their application, their interests, everything, that would be a spearhead kind of like to actually getting in. Right. Even if you may not have had the best test scores and GPAs and stuff in the world, it's because you were really driven and you kind of met this certain bar or criteria, which is super fascinating. But those are the 5 critical traits, and everything that you write about, you need to be like, you may not have all 5, that's fine. You need to really hone in on like 2 or 3 of your strengths, and you need to basically, as we like to say, is like just hit people over the head with them, right? So just be like, oh, don't think I had one experience that showed drive. Let me show a different experience. No. You want to show drive, you want to show drive again, and then you want to show drive again to the point where you're like, oh, that kid is just so driven. Like, I gotta let them in, right? They're like, by the way, like I was actually talking with dean of admissions of one of the top schools in the country, and he was saying is that, and we were talking about the 5 traits. He's like, yeah, we are looking for students that even in a pool of really exceptionally driven applicants are unusually driven.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So that's why you got to like just hit people over the head with these things. Like you're like, oh, I'm not just intellectually curious in this one thing. I'm also in this and this and this. And like, I'm like super intellectually curious. And you're like, okay, maybe I need to have this super intellectually curious kid, right? Or the super driven person, or the student that is like a leader in every possible thing that they ever set forth in, foot in, like they have like made it better. Like that's who I want, right? You see what I'm saying? Like those are the types of things that you want to come across. So do you want to get back to bad topics? Or do you want to keep going on?
This is I love asking the question, but going in a different way and getting the meat to the matter instead of what to avoid.
Yeah. So Mark, I'm actually working on might be launching later. I'm thinking of starting a Twitter of bad essays. So like literally like just like summaries of bad essays. Right.
You'd be busy, right? Because there's plenty of them.
Yeah, like I can literally just like rattle them off, right? So for example, a bad essay would be, oh yeah, COVID-19, for COVID-19, for example, if you're gonna write about something like that, like, oh, I was so disappointed because I wasn't able to play spring sports this semester, and I thought, oh, that's too bad. And then I decided, let's go play video games.
Yes.
Right. And guess what? A lot of students are going to write about, oh, like this is what happened to me. Like this was a bad situation, but they're not writing about the actions that they went to take to actually make their life better. Right. So let me give you an example of a bad essay topic. So, Mark, have you ever read an essay about like a mission trip or like community service?
Love the fact that students go on mission trips. Hate the fact that I have to read about them.
So time is a flat circle, I guess, but the fascinating part about mission trips is, and how you can write about them, is like you can make like a 2-hour thing seem like it lasted for a very long period of time. I distinctly remember reading one where a student went on a mission trip. I think it was to Ecuador, and they were like pouring concrete or like making a sidewalk for a like a school there. I was like, oh, that's nice, I guess. And I pushed like really hard, which we'll get into like in a second, like how do you make this actually functional? Um, or like when should you write about this as a topic? But it turns out that, well, this particular student like maybe did that for a day and then went to the Galapagos, which by the way, the Galapagos, wonderful, like not discounting that, but it's like a very, it's almost like you're going on this to be able to write about it, right? Or community service, like, oh, I volunteered for a couple hours, right? But now you're writing about this whole thing, like you're using that as the crux of your essay, but it's only a couple hours of your life. And so the critical piece of this is like what I call like, that could be an important moment in your life, what we call an inciting incident, where, hey, this mission trip made you understand something new and unique about the world or yourself. And you came back and you had this different mindset. So many people write about the mission trip, and at the end of the essay, and they realize, oh, I realize that so many people in the world need help, and I want to help other people.
Right.
And my thought is always, as I read any essay, and all of our writing coaches do this, we try to find gaps in the content. And what we say is, we basically what I call the unanswered questions. It's like, well, prove it to me. Prove to me that you are this different and changed person. Because this happened like 2 years ago or a year ago. So you came back, you had this different mindset. What actions have you taken? What have you done? Like, what have you literally done based off of this important key learning seminal moment in your life that you're writing about in your essay? And that is the essay. All of the actions that they've now taken is the essay, not the mission trip. The mission trip is literally maybe 75 to 100 words of your content. Right? It is what we call the inciting incident, the thing that kicks off this like massive journey of self-discovery and action and drive and initiative and all these great traits to come to that moment. Just going on doing a community service thing, for example, that somebody told you exactly what to do, right, and how to do it, does not prove to me that you're driven. It does not prove to me that you're intellectually curious. It does not prove any of the traits. No. None of them. Right?
One week away from technology does not change your life forever, unless you never pick up another piece of technology.
Technology again, right? Exactly. And so this is, let's talk about scoring the game-winning goal. This is the next topic. Okay. I'm just going to use game-winning goal, soccer. It could be game-winning shot, whatever it is, home run, strikeout, anything. Okay. Absolutely. Talk athletics. Many essays that we see are, I was so tired in the game, and but I knew that my team really needed me, in this moment, and so I just dug down deep and I scored the game-winning goal. Nice. It's the whole essay. I don't learn anything about the 5 traits from the student. Now, I can actually transform that into an incredible, amazing essay. But what the student actually has to have done certain things, okay? So the game-winning goal may be the end result, the impact, but the journey to get to that game-winning goal is really the important part of the essay. And what we find is that oftentimes athletes or really like driven people, and what they're doing is they're not just doing the sport in practice, they're practicing on their own. But not only are they practicing on their own, they're doing it in a very intelligent way, such that they actually may be studying what Messi does or what Cristiano Ronaldo does. They're trying to mimic their moves. They're practicing those, right? They're inventing their own stuff. And it just so happened to be that in that important moment in the game, they happen to have broken out one of these moves that they've been practicing